How's it going, guys? Brito here showing you my Digimon North American Nationals Top 16 Beelzemon deck profile. Um, I felt pretty nervous going into Nationals with Beelzemon because I honestly thought I was just going to scrub out early. Beelzemon has been my favorite deck since all the way back in EX2, even before we got the starter deck, and it's the deck I've played and grinded the most on. So if there was any deck I was going to play Nationals with, it was going to be the deck that I had the most skill with. So without further ado, let me just get into the cards, and I'll get into the matchups later. First off, I run 4 Yamons. I prefer the stack build, so building up to pretty much Balmon and swinging. I prefer the when attacking to mill instead of the Digivolve. For the rookies, I'm running 4 starter deck Impmons, 4 of the Imp X's, 3 of the On Deletion Imps, and then 1 of each the restricted EX2 Imp and the BT6 Imp. Um, in this format, I think the starter deck imps are really important since a lot of people were running the Gazimons and that was pretty much the main floodgate I was worried about when it came to piloting Beals. So like 4 of the starter deck imp because his inheritable when you trash card you pop a rookie. His warping also comes up late game, which is awesome, which won me a bunch of games. Imp X is mostly for recursion and when attacking trash top 2, so running him as a 4 of is kind of mandatory. 3 of on deletion imps, I kind of prefer it at 4, but I'll be honest, I got used to running it at 3 just because I don't have the 4th altar and I never felt like I wanted to get the 4th one. With 3, it's been working just fine. Um, the one of EX2 imp, I noticed there's a lot of people that use this card incorrectly. I rarely on play him. He's mostly used for the mill extender. That when you trash him, trash top 3. The only times I really use him to get played is, let's say it's late game and I don't have a Beals X in trash and I have a feeling he's coming up. What I would do is, let's say I'd mill with a Balmon or a Beelzemon, and if I were to mill an EX2 Beels by like stacking him on top and then milling him, I would use this late game to try to pick up the Beals X since it's a calculated risk that he's still like part of like the last few cards left in deck. Um, BT6 Imp works very similarly in the sense where if I need a Beals X from trash and I don't have any way to recur it, whether it's with Rivals or Imp X, he's another option where it's the same thing with EX2 Imp. I would mill the EX2 Beals, play this, on play, pitch a card from hand to pick up 7 Great Demon Lords to pick up the Beals X to hopefully go for game. When it comes to running 13 rookies, for me personally, I feel like it's one of the most consistent ratios. 12 is fine. 14 I think is a little too much. 13 for me is just a sweet spot. When it comes to my level 4s, I run 4 wizards, 4 X's, and just 1 Witchmon. I know a lot of people prefer Witchmon over Wizard X, but I'm part of the camp of I prefer to build in the back, promote the stack, and then turn sideways and just mill a bunch. I prefer to control my mills instead of just digivolving and relying on my digivolves to mill. I prefer to just digivolve safely in the back, promote when I can, and just start swinging and getting cards in trash. I prefer to turbo the trash. So yeah, 4 wizards, 4 wizard X's, 1 witch X, not witch X, 1 witchmon. 9 level 4s, I seem to me seems like the perfect number. I kind of do like it at my level 4s at 10, but I know to make space for everything else, I needed to cut it, and 9 level 4s are just perfectly fine. Witchmon also does come up mid to late game when, let's say, I have her in trash, and I'm like 3 cards away from getting to like the magic number of 20 or 30. I usually just pick her up, Digivolve for 2, hopefully keep turn with that, which I probably would if I choose this play. And yeah, Beals X from there. Uh, yeah. For the level 5s, some people think I'm crazy for this, but I prefer BT10 ball over starter deck ball. I mean, it depends on the situation, but for the most part, for me, early game, what I want to see is I want to see a rookie, a lineup from the rookie to the BT10 Balmon, because I prefer going second, digivolving in the back all the way up to Balmon, putting my opponent to 2 or so, and when it goes back to my turn, I just literally promote, turn sideways. When attacking trash 3, and then let's say I have the perfect stack of Imp, Imp X, Wizard, Wizard X, Balmon. I'm milling 3, 5, 7, 9. 9 cards just by turning sideways. And with the wizard, I can guarantee to get a Beels if I have the Beels in trash. So me with running only 4 Beelzemons, that tends to be kind of hard sometimes because I'm on the lower end of the Beelzemon count. That's probably like one of my. I'll get into that now in a sec, but let me just finish with the Balmons. Mid to late game, I prefer this Balmon because it's like I trash a bunch with this. I mill an EX2 Beels, spawn an Imp. With the cards in my hand, I hopefully mill enough memory to just build up a second Balmon stack in the front. Essentially, just do the Shadow Clone Jutsu. But early game, I want to see the BT10 Balmon. He is my preferred Balmon. That's why I run him at 4. Early game, he's what I want. Late game, BT10, starter deck 14 Balmon is what I want. For my Beelzemon count, a lot of people thought I was crazy as well for just running 4 Beelzemons and only having one be the starter deck Beels. Um, I have a somewhat controlling playstyle where I like to build safely in the back, and then once I start playing, like once I start building in the front and playing in the front, I make sure I'm controlling your board as I'm trashing cards and hitting security. With the EX2 Beels running it at 3, it helps me increase the control capabilities of the deck as well as the aggression. If I Digivolve into him, I essentially, and I can keep turn, I can pop 2 things in one turn. When Digivolving, trash top 2, pop a level 3, and then for every 10 cards, increase the level. And then when I attack, I do the same exact thing. So in a wide board meta, especially with like Merva Anubis and all these other things running around, this guy helps out a lot. Starter deck Beels for me only really comes up if late game when I do the Impmon warping play. Sometimes I can get them early in hand, and I get like these 2 in hand instead of going into the BT10 Balmon. I would pass turn by doing something else, promote the level 4 afterwards, Digivolve into Balmon, hopefully keep turn, and then this Beels. And if I don't keep turn, that's totally fine. With these 2, I have the floating effect. But for the most part, I got used to seeing them late game. EX2 Beels, like honestly, this set he's been a godsend. He's been the best Beels around so far. And then mandatory 2 of Beels X's. I feel like if you go up to 3, I think it'll be a little too clunky, especially since I'm not running the X antibody option, which I will get to. I will get to that in a bit. 3 would be too much. 1 wouldn't really be enough because if one of them is in security, you're just kind of screwed. If your opponent's not hitting security, like in a security control matchup. And then the one spice tech that a lot of people didn't really see coming was Ruin Mode in Beels. I think Ruin Mode is just as crucial as Blast Mode for game because there's been plenty of times where, for example, I've been able to clear my opponent's board. I've been able to burn all their security, but I'm stuck at 0, and I don't have a way to gain memory to do the blast mode for game. And my opponent has like a rookie or a level 4 in the back, and I'm down to like 1 to 0 security. The only way I could stop them from having game is if by digivolving into ruin mode, minus 5k to their board, and it would stop them from like promoting or just playing the game. Ruin mode has been just as important because in situations like that, my opponent just scoops because they know they can't control my board and they can't do anything. So I've gotten used to blast mode, blast mode for game, and I've also gotten used to ruin mode for game. Even though the game doesn't end there, my opponent just scoops. Yeah, I don't see myself taking out Ruin Mode anytime soon. Maybe for BT15 to try out some other techs, but for the most part, Ruin Mode is great in Beels as long as you have like that control playstyle. If you're a little bit more aggressive with it, then yeah, probably dropping the Ruin Mode for like a 5th Beels for like maybe a second of the starter deck one is perfectly fine. Like honestly, I don't see an issue with that. When it comes to the Tamers, yeah, the 4 of Iron Makos. Before I used to like running them at 3 because like in BT13 there was a lot of hunters running around, and that was one matchup I was always afraid of because if they would, I would never play an Iron Mako in that matchup, and if they did manage to hit one in security, I would have to try to go for wide boards to mitigate them from controlling everything. But for the most part, in this meta, we don't really see too many hunters. I did run into a hunters in Nats in day 1, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, 4 Iron Makos is probably the best thing you can do. It's the best consistency piece when in regard to searching for all your main pieces, as well as as gaining memory and filtering your hand. This is probably a godsend when it comes to Mirage matchups, since you want to get cards out of your hand as quickly as you can, so to mitigate them from benefiting off a big hand size. When it comes to my options, I think this is kind of a standard. Four rivals, three slingers, two clusters. Um, I think you could drop down the clusters down in this format, but for the most part, with a controlling playstyle, if you like playing control, two clusters is mandatory. If you're a little less on the control side, you can just get away with one cluster. This is my main form of control and not decking out. I'm described to my friends that when it's late game and I'm about to deck out, I'm trying to win without losing. I'm trying to win without dying. So I've been able to loop clusters and Beelz X's for a few turns as long as I have the setup. So yeah, clusters, great card, helps you not deck out. Uh, the fact that I'm only running three slingers, that's probably like kind of a tough choice I had to make. I needed to cut something, and instead of me cutting like a rivals, I decided to cut the slinger because slinger is really good for like control, especially in the mid to early to mid game. And then it's also really good for like resource management in the sense of like gaining memory and continue on with your plays. Um, but since I'm running four Iron Makos, I figured this would be okay. Like the memory gain would be okay since I already have the Iron Makos. All right, now to get into some of the matchups I had in Nats. So since I got my nationals invite back in I think it was like August or something in Greenville Nationals regionals, I managed to get my 2 round bye. So I I didn't play the first 2 rounds. Once I entered the third round, I started playing and I went up against Black War Gray. Round three, Black War Gray, I lost to. I just kind of bricked. It was kind of rough. My opponent like had his way with me, and I just couldn't recover. But yeah, he got it. He got that one. So I pretty much started off the day X1, and it felt really bad. I thought I was gonna scrub out, but I managed to win almost every single one of my matches afterwards in the X1 bracket. Round four, I went up against an Anubis, 2-0. He, I would say he kind of bricked as well as those certain things he messed up in. He didn't know a certain ruling, so he tried to like Deathclaw, not Deathclaw, calling to pop a Levia. He picked up the Levia using the calling, but then he tried doing it like an on. It was we had to call judge, but yeah, he messed up on certain rulings, and that's what allowed me to get game. That him bricking as well as me just hitting him with the knowledge checks, it was a 2-0 sweep. Round five, I went up against this one Black War Gray player that he took his time trying to get the plays done, but I don't blame him. I managed to put him in really weird positions because I kept on getting awkward hands where it was very playable, but it was hands where I couldn't exactly try to go for game. It was just hands where I could set up, stop him from getting game, and just continue on with my play. I kept on like looping ruin mode, so like every time he had like a stack up, it was like 9,000. Would have been swinging for like two checks, and he just didn't want to like take the risk. So like I ended up getting game one, and then in game two we went into time. So I managed to get the win just off that. Round six, I went up against Melga, which honestly Melga is kind of a free win for Beals. As long as like a lot of things have to go wrong on the Beals end for Melga to win. Um, Oftentimes they like to play in the front, and they're a single stack deck with only protection is battle protection. And oftentimes Beals doesn't control with battle protection. They control with either EX2 Beals, Blast Mode, any of my options. Like there's so many different ways to pop their stack, and it's very hard for them to go through my security and not hit a security bomb because I run so many of them. So I got that one 2-0. My seventh round was against security control. I'm a security control player myself, so like I know that matchup like the back of my hand, and that was one where my round seven I hit my opponent with the knowledge check of Shadow Seraphimon. He kept on digivolving into Shadow Seraphimon in each one of our games, and finally in game three I was able to take advantage of that and essentially teach him a lesson where he understood Shadow Seraphimon as for each card removed from your security, D-Digivolve 1, and that's not the case. Shadow Seraphimon reads, opponent's turn, when a card is removed from your security stack, D-Digivolve 1. Meaning if there's a single instance of security being removed, period. Doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, or 3. You only digivolve once. So the way I set up the board was I had a Beelzemon, I had a Balmon in raising, and I had three rivals set up, and I was at like 29 cards in trash. So what I did was when he passed, I promoted, digivolved into starter deck Beels, kept turn, digivolve for 1 into Beels X. Beels X when digivolving trash top 2, and instead of de-digivolving twice, I digivolved once. It went to the trash. I popped the rivals, brought back the Beals X to my hand, digivolved again, and I just kept on looping it until I cleared a security in that one turn. So if you play Shadow Seraphimon in your deck, don't use it against Beals. If they have it the setup, they're just gonna burn your security in one turn. And that's pretty much how I beat that first security control player I ran into. Round 8, I went up against Dark Nightmon. Dark Nightmon, round 8, him going X1. That was incredible. Yeah, Beals going X1 in Nationals is awesome, but Dark Nightmon, that was incredible. What sucks was that I hit into friendly fire. He was my homie from my local area, so like the fact that we got paired up was possibly one of the worst things that can happen for both of us. Unfortunately, one of us had to win, and it ended up being me. I got a 2-0 sweep. I wouldn't say I say that matchup is very playable on both ends. It was just unfortunate that he paired into me since I know the matchup super, super well, just as well as he does. And I know how to play against Dark Knightmon. He didn't hit me with any knowledge checks. I passed them all, and I knew exactly how to win. And I managed to get a 2-0. Round 9 is when I went up against Hunters, and that one was a back and forth a little bit, but in game 3, he just went into full control mode and he kept on digivolving to his 5 to try to clear my board. But then that used up all his resources under his Tamers, and I would just like end turn by popping his level 5, and he just it was hard for him to reestablish a board and any way to get lethal. So like that's how I ended up getting the game. In the final round of day 1, round 10, I went up against Fenri. At that point, I just kind of stopped caring. I knew that I was making it to day 2. I was just super, super happy. And I didn't really mind that I ended up getting awkward hands and my opponent just had like the nuts both games. So I just like was just nonchalant about it. I just didn't really care. I ended up losing that one, but I made it to day 2 getting like 34th, 35th place. And for top cut it was top 64. Then finally for round for the first 3 rounds of Top Cut, I was able to make it. Round 1 was against this one yellow hybrid Secon list. That's initially what I thought it was. Later on, I found out it was a deck that he would like to call Agumon, where it ran a lot of Agumons and a lot of Tamers, and it just ran a lot of security options. So it played very similar to Security Control, but it was a really really cool version. Like I'm not gonna lie, it was actually really really dope. But it played similar to Security Control. He made the mistake of running Shadow Seraphi, so I ended up doing that loop again, and ended up winning that way. And in game 3, actually, that's how I got the first game. On the second game that I won, which was game 3, it was I put my opponent to a 50-50. I was at like 20, 30 cards in trash, and he ended up popping my Beals X stack, and I floated into an imp. Before I decided which imp, I looked at my trash, and I only counted 2 EX2 Beals. And I remember I bottom decked the third one, and I knew it was coming up. So my opponent was at 0, and I ended up spawning the on deletion imp, and I essentially put him at a 50-50. If he leaves the imp, there might be a possibility I could get game that turn, which between like I there was no way I can get game that turn. I can only like probably set up. But if he popped the imp, he had the possibility of me milling the EX2 Beals and spawning another imp. And that's what happened. He decided to put me to 4 or 5, pop the imp. I milled top 3. I milled the EX2 Beals and spawned the imp. Like it was a very very good calculated risk because I knew he was coming up. I wasn't sure if he was the next 3, but I knew he was coming up, and that's what allowed me to get game. I spawned the starter deck imp. I hatched, started my turn. I swung, warped into the EX2 Beals, not EX2, the starter deck Beals, and I just cleared a security and then blast mode for game. But I'm telling you that round 1 was one of the coolest decks I've seen that anyone play in Nats. Then round 2, I went up against Anubis. And that Anubis player, he was really, really good, but once again, he kind of had awkward hands where My hand was just straight gas, and I just the 2 games that I won, well, I got it 2-1, but the 2 games that I won was because he had awkward hands and he was on his back foot the entire time. Whatever he promoted, I just cleared, and he just went into control mode. And at that point, if you start deleting Beelzemon stuff, if you set it up correctly, I just float into more stuff. So the Beelzemon stuff is just yeah, it was really, really strong in that matchup, and I was fortunately able to take it. My luck ran out finally in the third round of Top Cut, which was essentially top 16, and I lost against Anubis 0-2, where I just absolutely bricked both games. Um, it was really, really bad. I was able to just barely keep hold of both games, but ultimately he got it and he beat me, and my run was over. But I honestly did not care. I made it to top 16 with Beals. Nobody else could say they did that, and I was very, very happy. Um, is there anything that I missed? Anything that I missed? Yes, yes. A lot of people have been asking me also, like, why no trainings? Well, the way that I have this deck built, I don't like trainings at all in Beals. Reason being is that I only get value out of trainings when I get them early game. Meaning that if I don't get them in my first or second turn, they're useless to me. If I use them mid game, I'm like by that point I'm probably already gonna lose because I play for two, look for a piece that I might be missing, and at that point my opponent can just come back later. I just hate trainings. If I need to put in trainings, I'd prefer to put them at 4. But if I put them at 4, I have to start taking out from like the ratios I already like. For example, I'd have to bring down my rookies from 13 to 12, which that already feels bad to me. I'd have to take my 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 champions and my level fives down one, and I don't like that at all. It's happened to me so many times that when I tested it, I play a wisdom to look for like a level 4, level 5. I look at top 2, and I don't see any of the pieces I need. I see an option and a tamer, and at that point, that that wisdom, I'd rather it be just one of the Digimon I'm looking for. So that's kind of like my philosophy when it comes to like anything like that in Beals. It's or in general in any other deck. It's if you play it and you still whiff on the piece you're looking for, I'd rather that searcher that I played just be the piece I wanted from the start. So like that's why I have such high ratios of the Balmons and yeah, pretty much the Balmons because these are the ones that this is what connects the bottom end to the top end, the level fives. And if I don't see them, I'm probably not playing the game right or well. Um, and if I have to take drop ratios from anywhere, it just feels so neg. Especially in the options category. If I start dropping the options down by 1, I start losing on control capabilities of the deck. And like I mentioned before, I'm a very controlling player. So that just feels super, super neg. Uh, I almost forgot to explain why I didn't run X Antibody and Beals. For the most part, it's good tech. I really like it. It's cool in the sense where like the single greatest play you could do with the X antibody option is the whole warping imp into Beel's X pretty much. Like you warp into Beel's, then use the X antibody option to go into Beel's X. And it essentially does so much damage and it's really, really memory efficient. But the reason I don't like it is because in a long tournament like regionals or nationals, the most important thing you got to look for is consistency. And having to run the X antibody option, you got to run Balmont X. And I'm not a big fan of Balmont X because he's the only Balmont that does not float into a Beals. So if I have to run the X antibody option, I'd have to cut from the option ratios, and for example, maybe take down a cluster or a rivals for the X antibody option, running it as a one of, and then I'd probably drop the BT10 Balmon for a Balmon X. At a locals, where like you can get away with some inconsistency in your deck, it's totally fine. But like in a competitive scene like regionals or nationals, you need as much consistency as you can. So not running the Balmon X and an X antibody is the way to go in my opinion. Mainly since also just about everything you could do with the X antibody option, you could do without it. With of course with the exception of that warping imp play. So essentially, I just go into Beel's X for 1, just digivolve into it, trash the rest of the security, and I just swing for game. So it's in nationals. There was never a point where I felt like, man, I needed the X antibody option. Um, um, I think I went over just about everything I want to go through. If you guys have any questions, just go ahead and ask them down below. I'm gonna put a recap of my matchups in the description. Yeah, so if you have any questions, just leave a comment down below. Take it easy, guys.